Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Silverman, co-founder of CommerceNext. We're a community and event series for marketers at retail and DTC brands. On behalf of my co-founders, Veronica Sonsev and Alan Dick, I'd like to welcome you to our weekly webinar. We've been off for a few weeks, so welcome back. Today, we'll be talking about Invincible e-commerce, creating an unshakable growth marketing foundation. So from privacy restrictions to new approaches to creative, there is a lot of shaky ground for growth marketers today, but CommerceNext, as always, has you covered. And we have a great presentation and panel discussion to cover these topics. And as always, we welcome you to submit questions and be a part of our webinar and our conversation. So thank you all for tuning in and making the time to join live or listen to the replay. A couple important thank yous I wanted to kick off with. First, for our speakers today. So you will be hearing from Suruchi Shukla, VP of Marketing and Omnichannel Growth at Tailored Brands, Houman Akhavan, Chief Marketing Officer at CarParts.com, Eric Tsai, who's VP of Marketing and Business Development at Joybird, and Kevin Goodwin, VP of Client Engagement at New Engen. And we recognize how busy you as speakers are, and we really appreciate and want to thank you for taking time to share your insights with our community. You will be getting a nice thank you gift from Gift Now, plus 5 lucky attendees will be randomly selected to also get a gift. And this is for the live listeners, so sorry, replay listeners. And a big thank you to New Engen for sponsoring today's webinar. We really count on our sponsors to bring these webinars to our audience as much as we have been doing. And it's been a real pleasure working with the New Engen team on the webinar. They brought this idea to us about Invincible e-commerce, and it's a great concept for what's happening today. And I think you're all going to find a lot of value in the conversation. So moving on to the agenda for today's webinar, I have a few housekeeping items, and then we're going to hear a presentation from Kevin Goodwin on creating an unshakable growth marketing foundation. As always, we have some audience poll questions, and then we'll turn the cameras on for our panelists and have our panel discussion, and that's where we want to get to as many of our audience questions as you'd like to send to us. So we have a couple of things that are coming up. We've been doing best to fill your LinkedIn feeds and your inboxes, hopefully not too much, about all these opportunities to join us in 600 people that are going to be at CommerceNext IRL in real life, September 28th and 29th, which is in less than 2 weeks at the Sheraton in New York City. It's going to be really amazing to finally get our community together again in person. We have what we believe is our best lineup of speakers. Please go to CommerceNext.com to learn more and register. There's still space available, and if you can't make it, we have a live stream, so you can register for that at CommerceNext.com as well. And we hope to see you either in person or on the live stream. Our newest episode of Conversations with CommerceNext is now available. It's an interview with Bill Bass. He's a friend of mine. I had a chance to work with him in the past. He is currently the CMO of Full Beauty Brands and a veteran of e-commerce. And it's probably some of the best career advice we've had on the podcast so far. You can find that on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And finally, we want to remind you that if you have missed any past events, we have a very vibrant YouTube channel. We have all of our past webinars and summit sessions. There's conversations with CommerceNext, interviews there. So please make some time, go and check that out. Subscribe so you can get notified whenever there is a new piece of content available for you. So a couple housekeeping notes. Don't worry if you're about missing anything. We're recording the webinar. We'll have it available tomorrow as a replay. And I just want to show you where a few things are on your screen for the webinar platform. So as I mentioned, we always encourage taking questions. So the on the webinar, you'll see on the upper right is the audience console. That's where you can ask questions. You can participate in the chat. You can see handouts and so on. Chat, which is circled here, is where you can make comments about what you're hearing. You can give our speakers high fives and interact with other audience members. And then if you have a question, use the Q&A, and then just go down to the bottom, submit your question. And when you see your question or other questions and you want to give them a little higher profile, feel free to upvote that. That helps us understand which questions the audience is most interested in hearing about. And we have a couple handouts. So Kevin's presentation on Invincible e-commerce is there. Also, there is a white paper from New Engen on a similar topic, but a little more detail. So encourage you to download those from the handout section. And if you're listening on the replay, you can see there on the bottom right is where you access all of that. So to set the table for our discussion about an Unshakable Growth Marketing Foundation, with us today is Kevin Goodwin. He's VP of Client Engagement at New Engen. He's presenting an overview of key trends that's driving all this volatility in growth marketing. Kevin has walked in your shoes. He's was part of the marketing team at Zulily. He's been at New Engen for the past 5 years and has been acquiring more and more expertise on performance marketing. Really excited to have him share his overview. Again, after Kevin does that, we have some audience questions and then we'll have our panel discussion. So Kevin, thanks for joining us today. Welcome to our virtual stage.
Thank you, Scott. I'm excited to be here today. We'll obviously be talking about Invincible e-commerce, how to build an unshakable marketing foundation. And the goal for our discussion is to help you operationalize this concept through a practical action plan you can make your brand truly invincible with. So Scott stole my thunder a little bit, but before we dive in, I'd like to quickly introduce myself. My name is Kevin Goodwin. I am the VP of Client Engagement at a digital marketing agency based in Seattle called New Engen. You can see the beautiful gray Seattle sky behind me. I spent the first 7-8 years of my career working hands-on in paid and retention marketing, doing everything from one of my favorite topics, which was building Gmail promotion tab-proof email campaigns way back in the day, to managing over $20 million a month in client media budgets across Google, Facebook, and other media channels. I'm a de facto marketing nerd. That's why I'm here. I'm excited to talk to you about that. And of course, if any of you are interested, I'm always happy to geek out on marketing stuff offline. So before we dive into how we think about building this invincible e-commerce strategy, I want to spend a few minutes setting the stage and articulating why we are even talking about this idea of invincible e-commerce in the first place. For the last 10 years, we've witnessed the rise of what we all love to call the duopoly, Google and Facebook, in the digital advertising space. Through their access, Google and Facebook's access to incredibly deep and personal first and third-party data, these two have built probably the most powerful customer acquisition tools in history. You can make the argument for others, but I think really these two stand at the top. And through their own success, Facebook and Google also helped give rise to the pure play D2C model in the early to mid 2010s. I know there's probably a lot of D2C brands on the website. I'm sure you're heavily invested in Facebook and Google. Obviously, the classic early day brands like Casper, Away, Glossier, and again, I'm sure many of your brands were able to build rapidly growing businesses through heavy investment in Facebook and Google ads. Now, with easier tools and more concentrated media budgets, we saw a lot of brands start to move away from agencies and to in-house marketing teams and creative teams. So that's kind of one stage of this. Now, if we look more recently, we're starting to see major shifts that suggest that digital advertising and obviously therefore the e-commerce space and growth strategies will need to evolve substantially. In 2018, I'm sure everyone's familiar with GDPR in the European Union. And then just early last year, we had the rollout of CCPA in California. And with increasing regulatory regulation, like those two, GDPR and CCPA, excuse me, Facebook and Google are getting ahead of it, and other channels as well, and taking their own action in tightening data privacy. So obviously iOS 14.5 is the hot topic impacting the efficacy of Facebook performance right now. I'm sure many of you are feeling this in different ways, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. We also have the looming cookie apocalypse, which is the deprecation of the third-party cookie coming in 2023. So lots happening in the industry in the last 10 years. Again, I'm sure most of you are well aware of these things. layer in a global pandemic in the last 18 months, and everything goes to a whole nother level of kind of chaos and disruption. So not to be an alarmist, but this is really just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm sure, again, a lot of you are aware of this. As we continue to see shifts in privacy legislation. I know the Apple conference is happening right now with iOS 15, and everyone's kind of patiently awaiting what's going to happen there. So a lot to change, which is why it's really important that we're focused on laying the foundation today for this concept of invincible e-commerce. Okay, so now that the stage has been set, let's talk about some actual steps you can start working on right now to strengthen your e-commerce and marketing foundation to help you thrive amidst continued industry shifts. My hope is these are very action-oriented items for you all. You can go implement these today if you're not already, and that this isn't just kind of fluff and theory for you all. So the first step we recommend is to build a first-party data strategy. While many of you are likely already capturing first-party data or looking at this slide saying, duh, we'll go a few steps deeper and talk about how to really elevate your strategy. So diving right in, we have 3 critical recommendations for bolstering your first-party data strategy. Firstly is on the data capture side. Commit to capturing accurate and detailed first-party data across all customer touchpoints. Now, be thoughtful in your approach and be sure to measure data capture impact on actual customer metrics like conversion rate, retention. We don't want to tank, the ability for customers to convert on the site for the sake of gathering data. An example here could be a post-purchase survey where you ask customers maybe how they heard about you or what product features they love the most. Just a great way to gather data in a pretty low-touch way for your customers. Secondly, now that you have a lot of the data, we strongly recommend diving in deep to understand in as real time as you can how incrementality looks across platforms. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, many measurement platforms like Google Analytics are already pretty flawed, and Google Analytics and in-platform Facebook and Google metrics are soon to be even more compromised going through these privacy changes. So given that, incrementality, and particularly something like a geo-lift study, are becoming increasingly important to measure channel efficacy and make those key planning decisions when it comes to how you're allocating budget across channels, how you're allocating budget across audiences, and the like. Now, lastly, brands need to understand customer LTV to inform CAC targets. Driving growth will only get tougher with signal loss. We're already seeing that. And increasing cost of advertising is also a huge player in this. As it does, the value of paying precisely the right amount per customer will become even more important. Our initial recommendation here is to look at cohorts of customers, usually by month or quarter or first purchase by channel, and then track how much revenue those customers bring in over 90 days, 180 days, 365 days, et cetera, whatever makes the most sense for your business. You'll find that LTVs vary a lot depending on where customers are acquired, how they're acquired, and it's really important to take that into account as you think about deploying your media dollars. So jumping right into an example of kind of how that can look, this is a really good example of an LTV analysis we were just talking about, and one we actually helped one of our clients with, in this case, BET Plus. Obviously, BET Plus isn't a true e-commerce business, but as a streaming subscription, it's a really clear case for LTV and customer retention, so I think it's a great example here. The chart we are looking at here shows how retention rates vary across audience segments. We use to acquire customers on paid social, specifically Facebook, if you see the lookalikes in there. As you can see, something like an active user lookalike on the far left actually has around 3 times the retention rate of a different affinity audience we're running on the far right in orange. So the big question is obviously, how do you act on this? Well, what this told us is we could actually go pay more for the users acquired through this active user lookalike audience, as much up to the target that we're comfortable with. But at the same time, we probably needed to pay a little bit less for that Black culture affinity audience on the right in orange. So we developed a more informed audience level CAC approach that helped us to drive improved LTV for the business and ultimately better growth for the business. Now, just to wrap kind of the first party data strategy topic, there's obviously always more you can do with your first party data strategy. And I'm sure many of you on the call are already performing different or similar or interesting analyses. I'm sure a lot of you know your LTVs, a lot of you are capturing some of that first party data. But hopefully these 3 specific recommendations are really just helpful for you, especially if you're not doing them, and they will really help you differentiate from your competition. Okay, moving along to step 2, lean into social commerce and marketplaces. So we talked a little bit about the deprecation of third-party tracking, iOS 14, cookie apocalypse, et cetera. Platforms like Facebook have an enormous incentive to insert themselves into the customer purchase journey and close the loop. Marketplaces effectively already close the loop in the customer journey as kind of everything happens within their platform. And I know if you've been around the space for a while, you've probably seen attempts in social commerce have really fallen short historically. If everyone remembers Facebook's cryptocurrency, Libra, maybe a little before its time, but I think a good example of something that fell a little short on their front. But as precision targeting capabilities diminish, really in the last 12 months or so, we see tight loop commerce platforms and marketplaces as a key investment for brands moving forward. And I'll share this. I know from conversations with close contacts at Facebook and Snapchat and other paid social platforms that this is a huge priority for them. They're investing lots of dollars into it, lots of resources. So if that says anything, it tells me it should be a priority for you. So it's not just me saying this. If you've been paying attention to the industry analysts, everyone's projecting massive double-digit growth in social commerce and marketplaces. In 2020 specifically, with pandemic tailwinds, the social commerce market surged close to 40% following years of kind of mid 20% growth. And Amazon actually hit 10% market share in the digital ad space about 2 years ahead of schedule. So we've seen kind of a massive growth in this due to the pandemic and expected to continue going forward. Now, there's one clear downside as we think about kind of social commerce and marketplaces, and that's that brands, you all will lose some of the rich customer data that you'd get from transactions happening on your storefront, which goes in counter to what I was just telling you about gathering first-party data strategy. However, we still believe the upside here well outweighs the loss of first-party data due to the access just to new audiences and incremental sales and customers. And I'll quickly touch on what the marketplace looks like specifically, the marketplace, the landscape. Most of you are probably familiar with this at a high level. Obviously, everyone knows Amazon. But when we specifically look at the marketplace landscape, there really is a lot more going on than just Amazon. There's one of the original players, eBay, that's out there, and then two really big retailers in Walmart and Target. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with Facebook's marketplace. They really make it front and center within the app. They push it really hard. I just moved, did a ton of purchasing and buying and selling through the marketplace. It's super convenient, so it's growing really, really quickly. What I want to focus on here for a few seconds is the third bucket here, these publisher networks. And this is one of the newer marketplace opportunities. Some of the publisher networks that provide access to this inventory are partners like Criteo. I think there's another one called Citrus Ads that does a lot of kind of more grocery-oriented retailers. But what these provide is access to buy ad inventory, not just on marketplaces like Target, but also with retailers like Costco, Best Buy, and more. And yes, when I first saw this slide, Toys R Us stood out to me as a brand. Yes, they still exist. If Toys R Us is on the call, I used to love going there. We expect these opportunities, marketplace and social commerce opportunities, and ad inventory opportunities to continue expanding over the coming years as more retailers branch into this space and expand their own revenue streams. Okay, step 3. This is one of my personal favorites, having spent so many hours myself testing creative in Facebook, thousands and thousands of hours. Implement an agile creative testing framework. With decreasing conversion signal and advanced targeting opportunities, some of the automated creative solution advertisers have come to know and love over the last decade are going to lose their efficacy. Think your DPAs, your kind of automated dynamic ads within Facebook, even some of the stuff within Google with responsive search ads. And so this has a few key implications for brands. 1, a robust creative testing framework will be even more essential. 2, the volume of creative assets needed to support growth will increase substantially. And 3, the ability for advertisers to interpret data and iterate on creative at scale would become even more critical differentiator as a brand. Before we dive into these 3 points in a bit more detail, I do want to share a data point I really love. And again, having kind of run ads myself, this really resonates. And I'll just read it out loud. In 5 years of testing over 800,000 ad creatives, we've found that only 5% are breakthrough creatives. This is from kind of our own in-house data at New Engen across all of our clients, but pretty startling when you see kind of that 5% number. And so I guess I see a quote like this, I say, okay, what does this mean? And really what it means to me at a simple level is winning with creative is really hard, but it's still so essential to success. So to drive more predictable success really requires this agile and strategic approach to creative testing, which we're going to unpack in the next few slides. So this slide can be a bit confusing. I apologize for that, but it's one of my favorites actually, and this was created by our VP of Creative, Christian Ford. She's awesome. As we touched on the last slide, volume of testing is critical to winning. Establishing that test and iterate flywheel on the far right of this side, the pink iterate and optimize ads, is essential. But one thing that is important to understand as you develop a creative testing strategy is that every single test you run is a test you can build your brand and overall approach to content on. It's not just about channel performance. To give an example, imagine a Facebook image ad showcasing a young male model on the beach enjoying his new sunglasses. This ad features obviously a specific content type in the style of photography, and it features a specific brand style or voice in the messaging, tone, and stylization of the asset itself. We at New Engen like to ask not only if the ad is a winner, is it driving performance within Facebook or Snapchat or programmatic, but we also like to ask, is the content approach a winner? Is the execution of the brand strategy a winning approach? And the list goes on. As you might imagine, attempting to answer all of these questions without the right testing setup is a major challenge. You're trying to coordinate across teams, you're trying to bring in brand folks, performance marketers, et cetera. So we'll talk about what that can look like to build that common language. So here's what we recommend. We recommend creating frameworks. Having a framework, like I said, is all about having a common language for creative and media and really anyone in your organization to work from. So we use this framework format on the right here, paired with some custom reports, but you can use something with your own flair. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. The idea with ours is that you outline hypotheses and concepts to test with content ideas and execution approaches underneath. You tag each ad with these attributes and let the data show what elements are driving performance. We've actually had so many creative breakthroughs leveraging this format. It's just so exciting as a marketer, and I'm sure as a creative, to find a new hypothesis or new content lane that materially moves the needle for your business. And that's exactly what this framework is set up to do. So now that you have a framework, being smart about how you track performance is just as important. Without the ability to track performance, the framework serves very little purpose. Growth marketers, and I definitely operate this way myself, are often looking at performance day in, day out, every single hour of every single day, and it's easy to lose sight of the forest for the trees. So it's really important that you take a step back and set a right rhythm for broader creative performance reviews. I recommend monthly. I think it's just a good balance of kind of having enough time and not being a burden to teams. You can figure out your own cadence, but monthly is what we use internally at New Engen. And it seems to work quite well for identifying trends and ways we can adapt the creative strategy. So taking it back to the framework, this is a really nice, simple example from the LA Clippers, with the core kind of concept theme at the top being game day, the game day experience here. You can see how we've defined different content paths in the crowd, the walk up, the court, and executions themselves in the actual ads and asset delivery. And then on the right side, you actually have a scatter plot of how each ad performed. We love to plot kind of ROAS against spend because, I think especially within the paid social platforms, you see maybe a lot of ads that spend very, very little but have really high ROAS. But what we're looking for is both scale and performance. And so what this chart allows us to do is see both on the same axis and look at the whole picture kind of all at once. This illustration is a simplified view, but you can imagine the scatter plot having over 20, 30 ads in a given month with multiple ads sharing a certain theme or content traits. And then we've actually built some streamlined reports to illustrate what themes and creative elements are driving the best performance. But there are a lot of ways you can get at the insight through your own approach. I think what's really interesting is when you find a very specific lane, whether it's a content type or an execution type, that can maybe even go inform an entirely new kind of theme to your framework strategy. So the main point here, just to wrap kind of this creative section, is be agile in deploying creative and stay disciplined in sticking to your testing framework and learning cadence. Make sure you have those monthly check-ins. Make sure everything's mapping to the framework. make sure ads are tagged, and make sure the reporting's happening against it. Okay, step 4, the final step. We've spent so much time talking about Facebook and Google, the lovely duopoly, and the headwinds they face. So it's time to talk about channel diversification and why it's important to think differently about new channels. Effective channel diversification requires organizational-wide buy-in to experimentation and the proper measurement frameworks. Without the right buy-in and expectation setting, new channel tests risk failure and fast failure. I'm sure many of you feel this. It requires finance team buy-in, creative team buy-in, maybe executive leadership buy-in. There's a lot of folks with interest in new channel tests, and so it really does require kind of across the board collaboration. Patience is important as well. New channel testing takes time. Again, I'm sure many of you know this. I've never seen a channel prove its worth in 2 weeks, and usually not even 2 months. The TikTok tests you want to run will likely look terrible relative to your Facebook performance in your first few months. And that's okay. That's totally okay. That's part of the game here. As long as you can demonstrate a path to success over the long term and you're measuring things the right way. Now, just to quickly, again, set the stage here for kind of the channel landscape. If you've followed any marketing publication closely over the last year or so, you know about the growth of connected TV, digital video. I'm sure we're all partaking in that connected TV growth, and the longer tail of publishers beyond just kind of Facebook, Google, and Amazon. These platforms have all massively benefited from the conditions of the last 18 or so months. Now, there's one specific fact I want to highlight here. In 2019, just 7 companies netted more than 1% of US digital ad spending. By 2023, so barely a year and a half from now, 11 companies will have that distinction. So it doesn't feel like a big jump, but that's 4 new companies. That's almost a 50% increase. And you can see some of the key players making a vie for those positions. Obviously, Amazon's been a big winner. We've discussed that, pushing their share of the digital market above 10%. But the players like Hulu, Pinterest, Snapchat, and of course TikTok, everyone's new shiny object, are gaining market share as they cultivate really impressive audiences and really start to build those customer acquisition tools to match what Google and Facebook have. So what's most important as you think about new channel testing is that you properly align the channel with your goals. Over the last 10 years, we've gotten so good at ROAS and last click optimizations, but measuring a channel like connected TV under the same framework that you're measuring your Facebook or your Google non-brand campaigns against will lead to immediate failure. As you launch a new channel, clearly define where it fits into your customer journey and how you plan to measure it specifically. If it's a more upper funnel channel, like our connected TV example, for example, be sure to use a more upper funnel measurement framework. We often work with more mid upper funnel KPIs like quality visits or awareness and consideration lift. I'm really keen on doing awareness and consideration lift tests within channels like Facebook or YouTube. If those are your objectives, they are really effective at kind of defining performance. And to that point, we do run frequent lift studies for all of our clients across these channels because when you're looking at it from a Google Analytics perspective or a last click perspective, most of these channels are not going to look good. The last thing here is we recommend remaining agile with your budgets and tactics. Now, it's not ideal to be shutting channels on and off all the time, but it is critical to always be evaluating these channels based on your measurement framework and incrementality and making adjustments where needed. So channel expansion is a whole rabbit hole. I think we could do a whole separate webinar and conversation on that. I'm always happy to talk offline about this as well. So really, please reach out to me if you have any questions or want to brainstorm channel expansion. So that puts kind of a wrap on our 4 key recommendations. There is one kind of last thing I want to call out here that doesn't fit within our core framework. And it really is that the importance of seeking external input and responding quickly. There's a lot of focus and talk about reacting to your own internal data quickly. I'm someone who prides myself in the ability to figure things out myself. And so I'm always hesitant to go seek external help out of the gate. But using that internal data is absolutely appropriate. But when we're going through some of the rapid and constant change that we're going through right now and expect to continue to go through, your internal data may not be as helpful as it once was. What we're seeing is the really invincible brands, the ones that are really responding well right now, are seeking input outside of their 4 walls, and then using that input to adapt and respond quickly. whether it's advisors or board members or even just agency partners. Again, I've raised my hand as someone who's always happy to help, even if we don't work with you. Leaders at other non-competitive e-commerce businesses, and especially customers. The most important piece is that you have the ability to get perspective and have set up your team and processes to respond to a wide array of possibilities. So that puts a bow on our Invincible e-commerce plan. I appreciate you all listening to me talk for 15, 20 minutes straight here. I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to add. So thank you.
Great, Kevin, that was fantastic. Great foundation for the rest of the conversation, and especially the deep dive into creative and the process, because it's an area that I think is just not discussed enough, and it's so important. And you put a fine point on it, on how challenging that can be, and that the odds are stacked against you. So also a reminder to all of our listeners that Kevin's presentation is available in the handouts. And then as we get into the panel discussion, please feel free to participate in terms of asking questions. So wanted to get a little bit of a sense of where everybody is in terms of the audience, and some how you're viewing some of these topics. So we're going to be doing some quick polls. You'll see up in the console, there's a poll area. So why don't we go ahead and launch the first poll? And the question is, how has your performance marketing ROI been impacted by recent privacy restrictions from Apple, Facebook, new laws like CCPA, and so on? Just general, how are you seeing ROI impacted by these new privacy restrictions? So you're much better, somewhat better, about the same, somewhat worse, or much worse. All right, so we're seeing some of the numbers come in. If yours is not doing better, you are not alone. So around half is about the same. Around 40% is somewhat worse, and around 10% is much worse. So to be expected, and that's the reason we're having this conversation, is because things are getting harder. So let's go to the next question. So how would you describe your current efforts in measuring digital advertising incrementality? So Kevin didn't talk about incrementality. Hopefully you're familiar with the idea. But in terms of your experience with incrementality being measured, is it embraced across the organization? You're doing okay, but you still have a little bit more work to do. You're getting started, or you're satisfied with how you're currently measuring digital advertising and you don't have any plans to change. So your current measurement is just fine. You don't need to look into anything else. So let's see what our audience is responding with. So it looks like around half of you are doing okay, but you still have some improvement. Around 40% are getting started. Only about 7%, even less than that, are satisfied and don't seem to be interested in that. And a small percent, around 6%, are saying that it's embraced across the organization. So congrats to you on that. All right, we have one more question. So how will your investment in collecting first-party data change in 2022? I know it's still only September, but thinking ahead, what do you think will happen to the way that you collect first-party data in 2022? Will the investment be much higher, somewhat higher, about the same, somewhat lower, or much lower? Not a big surprise here. Around 50%, a little more than 50% is somewhat higher. Almost everyone is higher. Nobody is saying that they're investing less. Around a quarter you are saying it's going to be much higher. And around a fifth of you are saying it'll be about the same. So thank you all for letting everyone see how you're all thinking about some of these issues. I hope this is helpful information for you. So with that, I would like to bring up our panel for the rest of our conversation and hear what some operators are saying. So why don't we start with some introductions? So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to provide a little bit of context about yourself, your role, your company, and then give us a quick summary of how you approach growth marketing in terms of key priorities, channels, and then organizationally, are you doing things in-house or for an agency? And then, as we go through all of these questions in this conversation, I'm going to ask the panelists wherever they can to share any technology tools that they're using or considering for the different areas that they're addressing in their comments. So I'm going to start with the way it looks on my screen with Houman on my right. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And yeah, that was incredible presentation, Kevin. So hats off to that. Yeah, my name is Houman Akhavan, Chief Marketing Officer at CarParts.com. We're a direct-to-consumer retailer of aftermarket auto parts. My responsibilities involve delivering growth through customer acquisition and retention, delivering relevant shopping experiences, and being profitable all at the same time. And I'm sure that's something that we all kind of juggle with. Some of the way we approach kind of growth marketing, it's definitely a full funnel approach. But I also like to start with the customer first and keep them central to everything that we do. Knowing your customer is it's paramount to really understanding the channels you operate in, your messaging strategy, your creative strategy. So I definitely love starting with the customer first. And also a mantra that really drives us is deliver the right message to the right user at the right time in the right channel, and do all that in real time. And if you think about over the last 12 to 24 months with all the tech innovations that are coming out, machine learning and doing things in real time, I'll definitely share some examples of that as we get into the panel. But it's really leveraging the tech to kind of drive that strategy forward, because if you're trying to do things very manual, you're really going to leave opportunity off the table. So that's kind of what I like to advocate today.
Great. Eric, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Eric. I'm the VP of Marketing and Business Development for Joybird. I'm responsible for pretty much the same thing that Houman is responsible for, growing the business, growing revenue. And, same thing, I'll echo the same thing. We focus on customer data, right? It's not like everyone in the company is a furniture enthusiast, and although a lot of them are, right? But a lot of times, we try to not be biased and subjective about it and really bring data to the table and try to learn what it is about the customer. And also not just that, but verify, right? Sometimes customers tell you they want something, and then you bring that to the table and no one's buying it. So it's very important to really, verify your data, qualitative and quantitative, and also being able to innovate around areas that you really think that is going to make the customer have a pleasant, customer shopping experience and stuff like that. So.
All right. And last but not least, Suruchi from Tailored Brands.
Hi, guys. I'm Suruchi. I currently work as the VP of Omnichannel Growth Marketing at Tailored Brands. And for those of you who don't know us, we own the largest men's apparel brands like the Men's Warehouse, Jose Bank, K&G, and more is up in Canada. In my role, I oversee all of customer acquisition and retention activities. So very similar to what Houman and Eric are saying, our approach is very much an integrated media buying strategy, customer very much in the center. But we also have the added complexity of not just serving an e-commerce business, but a huge brick and mortar business. And for us, really building the right customer journeys that take that omni experience into account is extremely important. So a big part of my role is really finding the balance between our earned, owned, and paid channels, having the right tools and processes in place in order to enable some of those the more complex customer journeys, and being able to attribute the contribution of marketing to every sale, no matter where that happens, right? So this whole incrementality and attribution aspect of it is extremely top of mind as we think about how this year is shaping up and how going forward the next few years are going to be. Prior to Tailored Brands, I ran digital marketing at brands like Google, Nest, and Apple. So, I've kind of seen both sides of the coin a little bit. But I'm very excited to be here today and talking about this very important topic.
Great. So we asked one of those audience polling questions around the ROI impact of their marketing from privacy restrictions. And from the prep call we have, I know we had some differing opinions or perspectives on this. With we saw from the audience generally everyone was seeing lower ROI. But Houman, I know that hasn't been your experience. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. And then we're going to go back to you, Suruchi, because you certainly have seen an impact, and we're interested to hear what kind of adjustments you've made. So can you kick that off, Houman?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. Yeah, just one quick disclaimer. Every vertical and every business is different. And ultimately, you need to identify the channels that work for your business. Carparts.com, we're in the auto parts business. So it is a need-based product, right? You're not just randomly in the market for looking for a bumper or a fuel pump, right? There is some event that takes place, something breaks, and you need to replace it. And typically what we found is customers are using search is a mechanism to kind of find that product. It doesn't mean that we're not present in social channels. I mean, we definitely still leverage remarketing heavily, and we do want to be present where the consumer is in that moment in time as they're going through their complex, path to purchase. But we haven't seen the impacts related to iOS. But if anything, with a lot of this, with the news coming out in terms of third-party cookies being deprecated, we, kind of put our plans into motion, 2 years ago when I rejoined the business in 2019. We kind of set out to, personalization was a big focus for us. And a first-party data strategies really was the foundational element to driving that. And as we were building that, it was really in preparation for, hey, third-party cookies are going away. You're not going to be able to acquire, lists from third-party. And we didn't really build our foundation upon that. So for us, it was more, really focusing on the user, personalization. And within auto parts, like the vehicle is central to the customer, right? So the year, make, and model that they drive is something that we personalize on. And as I mentioned, like a lot of the platforms that are available, we use Blue Shift as our CDP. So it's really allowed us to kind of consume a lot of this data and create these relevant experiences custom tailored to the individual in real time. And I would say as you think about technologies or platforms that you're using, scalability is clearly an important thing, and being able to kind of make these decisions in real time.
And Suruchi, I mean, unlike the auto parts business, there aren't that many tuxedo emergencies. But I mean, I think that probably defines a little bit about, how different your business is. But yeah, I mean, I know you mentioned that you're definitely seeing an impact, and I'd love to hear, you describe what that is and how you've made some adjustments. And Eric, would love to hear you weigh in as well if you are seeing anything different than Suruchi.
Yeah, and Scott, you'll be surprised with the tuxedo emergencies. With the current supply chain issues, we've actually had tuxedo emergencies in weddings, but a whole different topic there. Yeah, so for us, unlike Houman, presence in the social media is extremely central to our marketing strategy, especially, it's in the apparel business. 2, we're a brand that's trying to down age our brands, and social media really plays a big part in that. So, the more you are active on platforms like Facebook and Instagram, the higher the impact from the changes that are coming down the pipeline. For us, I think the iOS 14 really went out for April 26th. That's like a date that's imprinted in my mind, because that's when really the downward trend started to build. But it's only in the last 3 or 4 weeks that we're starting to see this getting more and more pronounced. And Kevin, New Engen is actually our social media agency. So they're our partners in crime as we're trying to figure all of the details of truly what's the cause here, and how do we actually separate out what's happening in the marketplace in general from truly what an iOS impact is. I think that's almost the crux of the problem first, to say, how do we make sure it is causing that? And so things that we're trying to do is do some device testing. So between an Android and iOS, can we start to really decipher what's really going on here? But from a ROAS impact perspective, for us, the drastic drops is we used to be 2+ GA ROAS. We're now under 1, and that's it's a pretty big shift, which is really making us take another look at how much are we spending, and how are we spending heavier in our prospecting or the top of the funnel part of the social media, or is it more retargeting that we start to go after, and how should we think about even measurement? So one thing that we used to do is our look back windows used to be much tinier, and now we're expanding that to become 90-day look back. So anybody who's visited our website in a 90-day period becomes part of our prospecting pool now, Scott. So we're just trying to cast our nets wider in order to counteract some of that. The other thing we've also done is we used to do a one-day click, 7-day view type of measurements. We're now shifting that and going into more a one-day click, one-day view. So we're closer to what Facebook and others are reporting. So there's a bunch of different changes coming down the pipeline. Device testing results are slow going. So as soon as we start to see more of that, we will probably start to set up campaigns that are differently set up for iOS and Android. So more work for us to do, impact very much visible.
All right. So for us, we actually saw, a better performance because, we're lucky that we started everything out as 7 years ago, the company was created, and we had all these things in mind. So we were very focused on, tracking all the events, tracking every activities for the customers. Even before when Facebook just started, allowing us to upload data, we feed the beast. We just gave those guys all kinds of data they wanted. And we know the algorithm gets smarter and smarter and smarter, and you don't want to fight it, And part of the way that we also look at it is, we're kind of fortunate in the home space, right? It's, conversion rate is doing great. If you look at everybody who's in the public space, you'll see everyone's increasing tremendously revenue. I think it's important to look at and kind of the incremental increases of media costs, right? Normalize that, and then also then look at your conversion rate and normalize that too, and to see really is this impacting you. Because a lot of times, we see a huge increase in, the media costs. But if you remove that, it's not, your ROAS is actually much better, right? But also being able to take that into account. We also launched, a few stores in the last few years, and it has been tremendous for us in the way that we can also feed that data right back to Facebook and say, hey, these customers bought from our store, and can we have a lookalike of these customers that are, from this area that's dedicated to this store. And so the computer can learn it, but you can take the audience and test it in multiple ways as well. So we do a lot of testing, and we also track every single activity events from a long time ago. And so that a lot of that now moving to the conversion API, right? I think everything is going to be server side. You load up, you match it up, the data in the back end. So, we're lucky that we did all of that ahead of time. And also, we're a lifestyle brand, right? We're not, it's different than car parts or clothing, because you kind of know, oh, I have this part, I need this product. I have, you buy clothing all your life, you kind of know your body a little bit. People don't buy couches every year, we wish they do that, but they don't. So they don't have that knowledge and experience. We really got to cozy up to the customer and really build a real strong relationship. And that's kind of like our focus.
And Eric, going back to my, comment earlier about any, interesting tools or technologies that have been, helping you in this area, anything you want to mention?
Yeah, I mean, we started out doing a lot of our investments in messaging chatbots, and now we see reaping the rewards for it, because we can actually download all of that conversation, right? Obviously, we need to figure out a great NLP setup, natural language progression, so understanding what people are talking about, associating that to the user, segment them by whatever you want, geo, and interest and stuff like that. So a lot of times we use conversation commerce as a way to understand the customer a little bit, but also understanding the lifestyle that they're in, right? I think it's important that we try to get a lot of the information even before they purchase. And a lot of times I think Kevin talked about, you don't want to interrupt that experience. And I would challenge and say, you can't interrupt that experience, just don't do it the whole year. For a short period of time, it's very, very important to ask people in the cart, why aren't you checking out, right? What is the problem there? And then people that are checked out, you ask them, did you have the problem that people had problem with before they checked out? So kind of match that a little bit, right? And also creating content and just do a little pop-up. Do you like this content, right? Is this useful, right? Give me a thumbs up. So those are the type of things that will really give you more context and layer on kind of that data that you need, right? To be able to have more kind of an enrichment of your first party data.
So yeah, I want to move on to another kind of broader topic, and Yeah, I mean, part of the premise of what Kevin was presenting about this unshakable foundation is that you have to build it on shaky ground. And I think often marketers feel like they're at the mercy of so many external factors, like big tech and new laws and what iOS 15 is going to be and so on. And I want to turn to you, Suruchi, and just ask, I mean, like, what's your point of view of like, how do you structure growth marketing so that you're really controlling your own fate and you are not in a position where you're reacting to all these external factors? And I'm assuming you have to react, at some point, but you want to build a foundation where you can control your fate as much as you can. And I'd love to hear you, share a little bit about the way you look at that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and honestly, we are still figuring this out. The world around us is shifting as we speak, Scott. So, but it is forcing us to get a little bit more organized in our approach. We are getting more purposeful in the data collection that we're doing, how we're looking at using that data, how should our targeting strategies be built, is something we're now taking a deeper look at. It really comes down to how can we keep the customer at the center of everything and do everything to meet the customer where they are going. So, as Facebook and Google and others start to change their algorithms, the customer journeys shift. And so our ability to adapt to a shifting customer journey is what I'm focused on. And can we be nimble? Can we do that in the best possible way? But the other thing we're also trying to do is very similar to, I think somebody made that point. So we do have agencies that we work with, but we are also trying to work directly with the partners like Google's and Facebook's, and Pinterest is another one that we have a direct relationship with. So, as Kevin and all of the other social media agencies help us figure out how to adapt to the changes that are going on, we also work very closely with these partners directly, so they keep us apprised on what can we do more, how can our data strategies be shifting in order to meet what's coming down the pipeline. So it's really a combination of us being a little bit more nimble and adaptable on our end, understanding what data we're collecting and how we apply it, and then having a direct relationship with some of the people who have a direct impact on what we do.
And Kevin, I mean, you gave us a whole presentation, I think, which was to give everyone, some strategies there. Anything else you'd want to add, or is there anything that you see culturally in organizations that have made this happen?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll say, and I touched on this briefly, is like, how do you build that like organizational wide culture to understand that you have to test and iterate, and you have to be willing to tolerate failures and missteps and bad tests along the way. That's what it's going to take to get through this. Is the device breakout, like that might not work. We're going to go try it. We're going to hope it works, but it might not. And we need buy-in from an executive or a CFO or whoever to go be able to do those things. And so, bringing those folks along, helping them understand, I think, the headwinds we face as marketers is step one. And then two, I think helping them even understand kind of the mechanics of the channels and why we face the headwinds we do. That to me is the biggest one, is when we see that cultural buy-in. It sounds like all the panelists have this, fortunately, in their orgs, but without that, it's really hard to kind of lay the foundation for these big shifts.
All right. Well, it's hard to have this kind of conversation without bringing up attribution, and it came up in one of the customer or one of the audience questions as well. And we asked the question about incrementality testing and measurement. Houman, I thought maybe you could share. I know we just have about 6 minutes left, and there's a couple more topics I want to cover, but maybe quickly share, your thoughts on where you are right now with incrementality testing. And the specific question from Nikki Wilson is, would she like to hear more about attribution solutions? I think she has some questions about GA and Facebook analytics and hasn't quite found a platform that gives them really, clear, concise data that they can act on. So I know that's a lot for you, Houman, in a short amount of time. But
I'm going to take it on. So I think the challenge when you talk about attribution in terms of historically, we've had either first click, last click, linear, time decay. And I think the challenge a lot of these, attribution models of the past have been their one size fits all, right? And what we do know is every customer journey is different and the path to purchase is complex. Consumers are getting inundated with ads. There's so many different clicks that are taking place. And I think the number of clicks to purchase are probably increasing over time as well. I just know today it's definitely up there. So you need to, we leverage DDA, data-driven attribution. And really what that means is leveraging machine learning models to assign a credit to every click that's in a path to purchase, right? So if you think about, keywords as an example or an audience, every behavior is going to be different. So how do you leverage a model that in real time can assign different values to the different clicks in the purchase path? So I definitely see that trend going towards more real-time attribution and data-driven attribution. I definitely do share the concern in terms of, Facebook analytics and their tags, like depending on how you have it set up, it could really give you incorrect information. And if you go into the CFO office with that insight and the way you're building that ROI business case, you could be completely wrong. And GA out of the box is last click. I'm more looking forward to GA4. I think when the next version of Google Analytics coming out, there's a lot more that's being invested and they're moving away from session-based to event-based. So there's a lot more coming out of the analytics packages, but I would definitely say look at each channel and try to, use the latest attribution models that you can that are kind of more real-time versus one size fits all.
And I'm just seeing some messages from our speakers. They mention Measured, Rockerbox, and LiveRamp as solutions as well. So our audience should check those out. It shouldn't be too hard to find them online. So I guess lastly, and this is something that Kevin that I mentioned, I think is really important, is creative. And he talked about this framework for getting creative breakthroughs. And I don't know, Suruchi, real quick. I mean, are you finding like that you're getting some creative breakthroughs? Are you making any significant changes? Like, are you adding more resources on the creative side? Do you feel like we're in an environment where you need to think about creative a lot more than you have in the past?
Yeah, Scott, yes, absolutely. So, one of the data points that came across my desk the other day was, on average, a consumer in 2020 is seeing anywhere from 4,000 to 10,000 pieces of creative in a day, right? So our challenge really is, how do we stand out and help them remember us when they're seeing so much out there? So for us, we're looking at generating creative that is pushing us to think out of the box, things that, that can stick to them a little bit more, something that carries the brand personality along with it being it's never done before type of creative. So, bigger, bolder graphics, and UGC type of content, things that they can take back with them. But I do think, to the point that Kevin was making earlier, it's not just about coming up with the biggest, brightest creative. It's really about, adding a little bit more rigor and discipline around that testing frameworks that we talked about. So we, in partnership with Engen, we developed a very robust testing framework that looks at product versus lifestyle, messagings, video versus not, audio versus not, pricing, promo versus a brand type of creative there. So we've taken all of the non-performing creatives out of the circulation very quickly because of this framework. And so the ability to react and change your creative faster. Yes, I need a little bit more bandwidth on the creative team to be able to do that. But without that, it's very hard to keep your performance media performant and be able to be nimble as the market needs it.
And Eric, any other thoughts on the creative side? Anything you're doing differently or frameworks you're using you find useful?
Yeah, we like to involve the customer in that creative process too. So, we launched with, Pinterest and Mark Send, the 3D, ads. So essentially you see our ads, you can actually click on the Pinterest ad, you can design it right there in a 3D environment of your room and stuff. So if they are part of the creative process, they're going to be owning up to that a little bit more. So we actually launched a Joybird design house this past couple of weeks, and we give a lot of tools and resources to allow the customers to be part of that. and that's the part of the thing we're seeing that it's going to work.
Great. Well, man, this hour went fast. And I promised all the panelists that after they've inspired all of the listeners with all the cool things they're doing and sophisticated approaches, that they could tell everyone if they have job openings where they can learn more. So Houman, do you have job openings, and where can someone find out more?
Absolutely, yes. I would go to carparts.com/careers.
All right. And Eric?
Yep, we are hiring. So, you just go to joybird.com, browse around, you'll find, careers page as well.
And Suruchi?
Yeah, we're growing tremendously and hiring like crazy. So, I have about 11 different roles just on my team to fill. And then, we are trying to build our creative team a little bit more robustly. So creative, email marketers, our asset manager teams, our search engine media teams, everywhere we're hiring. So again, all the roles are definitely posted on the website. If you know any kick-ass marketers, please send them our way. We will be utterly grateful.
All right. And so Kevin, thank you to you and New Engen for being our co-host and presenting all this great information. And how about you? Any job openings, and where can people find out about it?
You sound like a broken record here, but the answer is yes. Newengen.com, same thing, kind of browse around. We have a careers page on there. A lot of media buyer roles, media performance marketer roles. It's a great place to get into marketing and learn the skills. So that's where I learned a lot of my paid skills. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me direct.
Well, great. Eric, Suruchi, Houman, Kevin, thank you all so much for a great conversation. Remember to check out the downloads that Kevin made available in the handouts. I hope to see many of you in New York in a couple of weeks, or at least have a chance to check out our live stream. And thank you all, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.